Angels based in New York City some years ago. I don't know if they're still around. And they had a chapter here for a while, and they were engaged
Yep.
in similar work. But
Yep.
it sounds like you're going to take it to the next level. So
Absolutely.
that's something for the community to look forward to. You've mentioned several times profiling. And this raises, we were talking a little bit about this before the show started, this raises the issue of one of the cases that's been most written about and discussed in this community, and that is the case of Officer DePonzio and Taekwon Rivera.
Right.
Now we know that that was a terrible thing that happened to Officer DePonzio, and we don't condone it.
Absolutely not.
But we were saying that there was a lot more to that case that didn't come out in the media. All of the coverage and so forth, there were some factors that were not mentioned. And
Absolutely.
You wanted to talk a little bit
I just want to be, before I get into that, I want to see, because I know that the RPD hates Davy V. I know that they despise me. They can't stand me. I know that they hated my father. I've had officers ridicule and make comments to my family members that my dad and his passing was one of the best things that could have happened in this community, okay? So I know that, and I'm aware of it. But the sad thing is, not only have they stereotyped and racial profiled minority members in this community, I was the only person, okay, after DePonzio was shot, I was the only person who showed up downtown, okay, with a billboard, with a poster board, okay, that basically said, you know what I mean, as a single father, as a father of 3 beautiful kids, okay, I do not approve of this officer and what happened to him being shot, okay? And I want to say that for the record, because I'm sure there's some RPD cops that may be watching this, or it'll get to them eventually. So I was the only one. Again, I wish there would have been other parents denouncing this violence. But the thing is, and I still stand on my word, on what I believe, it was horrible what happened to DePonzio.
Sure.
And later, I had somebody say, you know what, Davey, I loved seeing you on there, you know what I mean, because you represented, you know, and you're letting the police know that even though you've been against them and exposing their corrupt and their you know, their brutality, you could also, you know, not so much come to the support of DePonzio, but denounce what happened to him. And I absolutely denounced that, okay? What happened to DePonzio was terrible,
Sure.
okay?
Sure.
But there's a story behind it.
Okay.
And again, I always go to the root, or I try to go to the root of the problem, which is sometimes not as easy as other times. The police create and escalate certain situations. And while the police, DePonzio's fellow RPD members, did not make Taekwon Rivera, okay, pull the trigger. In no way did he make him pull the trigger, obviously, okay?
Sure.
He is still responsible for those actions. That's fine.
Sure.
There's a story that hasn't come out, which no major news media channel has even dared to touch. And here's the thing about DePonzio, not to contradict my earlier statement that I just said that I totally denounce and do not approve of what happened to him. Very sad, okay? I have a problem though. I have a problem with somebody being a hero, okay, overnight because he was shot.
Okay.
And I know that's a controversial statement, okay? I wish him the best. I was at Taekwon Rivera's. This is stuff that the RPD probably doesn't even know about Davy V. I went to Taekwon Rivera's arraignment. I wanted to see. I was shocked that this young man looks just a little taller maybe than my 8-year-old son.
Okay.
You know, he's a young kid. Not to approve what he did because there's no approval of that. But, you know, I met his parents. I met his mother. I gave them my best wish to their son, okay? But here's the thing. The police went to Dayton Street, okay, and they punked, they abused, and they humiliated a 14-year-old. Officers jacked him off a bicycle, okay? They abused him. They physically assaulted him, which led to him going into the house, getting a rifle, and taking shots or a shot at an officer who had nothing to do with what the other officers created.
Okay.
So what happened to DePonzio, and I don't know if DePonzio will ever see this, I don't even know, who knows. But what happens is, why won't nobody address the fact that in many ways, and perhaps we will never really know how to really dissect it and break it down, the Ponzio's fellow officers, maybe in an ironic twist of events, maybe some of the officers that helped save his life by rushing him to the hospital like they did, created, and I don't know if these officers, but officers at the scene created a tense situation. They started a problem when there would have been no need for that. But the RPD is great at that.
Okay.
Abusing, intimidating, and bullying young people in our community.
Okay. Now, I remember very distinctly that there was someone who called WDKX and said that he was an eyewitness to what you've just said.
Yep.
And nothing really ever happened with that. I think DKX turned the tape over. He called the that morning show they have, the water cooler show,
Right.
and it was recorded and so forth. And I believe they turned it, if I'm not mistaken, over to the police department.
Right.
But apparently there was no follow-up. Now, this is an example of what we call institutionalized racism in terms of the media. And our organization, ARM, has tried to deal with the media around this, is that, you know, often there are more in-depth stories that you're ignoring, that you won't even attempt to follow up on. And this is perhaps one of those situations. And they've said to us, well, we don't always have the contacts to go into the community. We don't know who to talk to. And we offered to work with them around that, around, you know, identifying people who would come forth and so forth. But this is, in fact, an example of the idea that Officer DePonzio did become much celebrated, was held up as a hero. Taekwon is sitting in prison and forgotten by a lot of people. So there's no question about whether or not the value of those two human beings' lives are viewed as equal by some in this community. They're not. They're not.
Nope.
They're not. And so that's an example. Now, I'm sorry, you were going to trying to stop me a while ago, and did you lose the point? Or?
Yeah, I most certainly did.
Okay, I'm sorry. Now, you wanted to talk more specifically about some of the work you've done and some of the things you've tried to highlight and that you want to remind the community of.
Yep.
So
the DVD features RPD Exposed, and my second documentary is RPD Badges of Dishonor, Corruption, and Murder. RPD Exposed deals with the 2001 cold-blooded murder of Vandy Davis, a 21-year-old father of young children, who basically was at a house for Joseph Avenue and Joseph Place, and an RPD cop came in during a drug raid and claimed that he tripped and fell on an extension wire, and therefore shot Vandy Davis in the chest and killed him instantly. Basically, through my documentaries, I always try to highlight a little bit. There's a lot of young people that's 12, 13 that have emailed me and contacted me about my work, but they have no clue who, like, Calvin Green was or Alicia McCullough, you know what I mean? Okay. How Alicia McCullough was shot, as a cop literally stood over her with witnesses, you know what I mean? And how D.A. Relin basically, another one of the most corrupt officials that there been in this city, Howard Relin, basically didn't do anything with the case, as is the norm, when there's no prosecution. RPD Badges in Dishonor, Corruption, and Murder is my second attempt to hit the RPD as hard as I can, with basically not only bringing it again from Urlacher, back from Calvin Green, Alicia McCullough, Urlacher, just to give people a little preview, but also focusing on the two murders, RPD cold-blooded murders and executions of 14-year-old Craig Hurd, who was a African-American honor roll student at Charlotte Middle School, who was executed in a dead-end street. He was unarmed and shot twice in the head, interestingly enough, by two cops who claimed that he was coming at them and they didn't have time to move. They didn't have time to move, but they sure as hell had time to get in their stance, point their nines at this young man, and shoot him basically right on point 2 times in his head. So they had time for all that, but they didn't have time to move out of the way of an oncoming car. And basically, Lawrence Rogers, a man with some obvious disability type, mental issues, running around in his underwear, okay, at a Wegmans parking lot. So obviously that was a clue to get some type of crisis intervention team or whatnot. But no, an officer named Thomas Rodriguez came and basically beat the hell out of him. And an hour later, and he's on video in my DVD beating him, an hour later he basically passed away at Rochester General Hospital. Same officer who pressed charges against me for harassment, same officer who had a city court judge who's an ex-DA, give him an order of protection against me, a citizen. So there's this thing where the police hate, to have their wrongs be exposed.
Okay.
And it's their way of getting retaliation against me,
Yeah, sure.
for being that thorn in their side. So that's those are my 2 documentaries.
Okay.
A lot of people ask me, you haven't done anything new in a few years. It's sad that I say this, but I have been so stuck on not allowing the people, we as a community, to forget. And that is what the RPD wants.
Okay.
That's why my campaign, as you can see on the flyer, is called We Should Never Forget.
Okay.
And those are just 3 among many that have been unfairly, just murdered in cold blood, executed.
Okay. Now, if people want to get in touch with you,
Yep.
how do they do that? How do
They
go?
can reach me at 474-2316, or they can email, and it's a long email. I'm hoping you guys post it up. It's Keep It on the Real Productions at yahoo.com.
Okay, give the number again.
585-474-2316.
Okay. Now, in terms of
I had a
people-
question.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask him, okay, are you concerned that either yourself or your family members may be targeted by Rodriguez or the RPD? And if so, how do you plan to protect yourselves?
I do. I mean, that question comes up a lot. The Source magazine interviewed me, and the editor asked me the same, but
I don't want to interrupt you, but because we're getting a signal,
Okay.
give him the short answer, and he'll have to get the full answer the next
that's
time we
okay.
have you on the show.
I do, but I also believe you got to stand up for something that you believe in, and that's what I'm doing.
And speaking of complacency, I remember you mentioned Alicia McCullough when she was killed by the Rochester Police Department. Her father, the late James McCullough, and other leaders waged a campaign that went on for months. No More Whitmore was the officer that shot her. And that's the kind of thing I think we need to see happen again. Once again, we'd like to thank the community for tuning in, and we thank Davy V for being with us, and we'll
Thank you.
invite you back real soon.
Thank you.
As always, we close by saying no justice.
No peace.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many